I want you to picture a room. It's in a hospice. It's small, pretty nondescript. Room number 12.
Okay.
And inside, there's an old man. He's living in almost total isolation, no family around him, and he's left these very specific, very bitter instructions for when he passes.
It's true, you say.
Very. He wants no funeral ceremony, no mourners, no procession. In fact, he actually writes down that he wishes to be carried to his grave like a dog.
Wow. That's a harsh image. I mean, if you didn't know who this was, you'd assume it was the end of some tragic, completely wasted life. Someone forgotten by the world.
But that is the entire twist. The man in room 12 wasn't forgotten. In fact, at the very moment he was writing that, he was one of the most famous men in Europe.
He was the very first recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize.
Exactly. He is the reason we have the Red Cross. He's the reason we have the Geneva Convention.
Henry Dunant.
Yeah.
And it's just one of the most jarring contrasts in history. You have a man born into the absolute upper crust of Genevan society who dies in a hospice room.
A man who dined with emperors and then, years later, was blackening his own coat with ink to hide that it was falling apart.
Just incredible.
So today, that's what we're doing, a deep dive into that life. We're working off the biographical data from the Nobel Prize Organization, and our mission here isn't just to, recite dates.
No.
We need to understand how a business trip, literally a corporate quest for water rights, accidentally created the entire modern concept of humanitarian aid.
And that's the part that usually floors people, right? We like to think of these heroes as saints who set out from day one to save the world. Dunant didn't. He set out to get rich.
Okay, so let's go back. Before the history books, before all of that, who is Henry Dunant in, say, the 1850s?
He's a young professional in Geneva, born in 1828. And the source material really emphasizes that he comes from a very specific world. His family was wealthy, yes,
Right.
but they were also deeply religious and very civic-minded.
The source mentions he was really active in the Young Men's Christian Association, the YMCA.
He wasn't just active, he was a representative. He was traveling for them. So, before he ever steps on a battlefield, he has this foundation of Christian faith, of social duty.
But, and this is the key detail, he's not a doctor, not a soldier.
He's a businessman. And a businessman with a pretty big appetite for risk, it seems. When he's 26, he goes to work for a company dealing with colonies in North Africa.
But he doesn't stay an employee for long.
No, he wants to build his own thing. He comes up with what the source calls a daring financial scheme.
Daring is usually code for high risk.
Oh, definitely. He makes himself president of this company in Algeria looking to exploit a huge tract of land. And the numbers here are just staggering. It was capitalized at 100 million francs.
Which is a massive amount of capital for the mid-19th century. This is a major industrial play.
A huge play. But there's a problem, a snag. To make the land profitable, to get these mills in Algeria running, he needs one crucial thing.
Water rights.
Exactly. And this is where he hits the bureaucracy. Colonial administration is slow. Dunant is not patient.
He's got investors breathing down his neck.
Right. He's got all this capital tied up. So he decides to just bypass all the middle management. He's going to take his plea straight to the top, to the ultimate authority.
Emperor Napoleon III. I mean, the sheer audacity of it.
Uh-huh.
I need water for my mills. Let me just go knock on the Emperor of France's door.
It really speaks to his determination. But there was a logistical problem. The emperor wasn't in Paris. He was on campaign commanding French and Italian armies against the Austrians.
So a normal person would wait. Send a letter, maybe.
Dunant packs his bags. He travels straight into a war zone. He tracks the emperor to his headquarters near a small town in northern Italy called Solferino.
And his timing could not have been worse.
Or, for history, maybe it couldn't have been better. But for him, personally, a nightmare. He arrives right as the Battle of Solferino is breaking out. And this isn't some skirmish.
No, this is one of the bloodiest battles of the entire century.
Yeah.
We're talking about a time before modern triage, before antibiotics.
And Dunant just walks right into the aftermath. He went there for a signature on a business document. Instead, he finds what the source calls chaotic disorder, despair unspeakable, and misery of every kind.
That phrase, despair unspeakable, it does a lot of heavy lifting.
It really does. You have to imagine this little town, Castiglione, where the wounded were dragged, churches filled with dying men, no doctors, no supplies. Just thousands of soldiers.
And this is the pivot point. This is where the accidental humanitarian is born.
It is. because he doesn't leave. That's the thing that gets me. He's a civilian, he's Swiss, he's neutral. He could have just turned around.
But he stays.
He doesn't just stay, he organizes. He starts pulling together care for the wounded, and this is crucial, regardless of their side. Austrian, French, Italian, it didn't matter to him.
And that idea, treating the enemy's wounded, that was not exactly standard procedure in 1859, was it?
Not at all. You were just left to die, mostly. Seeing that human cost, well, it cracks something open in him. The source says his awareness and conscience were honed.
Honed. Like the trauma focused him.
I think that's right. The business deal, the water rights, it all just became irrelevant. He went back to Geneva, but he couldn't shake it. He was haunted. So, in 1862, he writes a book.
El Souvenir de Solferino, a memory of Solferino.
And this book, it wasn't just a memoir, it was a tool, a strategic document.
The source breaks it down into 3 themes, right?
Yes. The first 2 are descriptive, the battle and the aftermath. He forces you, the reader, to stand in that church, to smell the gangrene.
But it's the third part that changes everything.
The third theme is the plan.
So let's talk about this plan, because on paper, it sounds impossibly ambitious for a guy who just had a bad business trip.
It was revolutionary. He proposed that nations form permanent relief societies, not just when war starts, but in peacetime.
So an infrastructure for mercy.
Precisely. And they would train volunteers to treat the wounded. But the real problem was, how do you send them onto a battlefield without them getting shot?
You need a rule, a law.
You need a treaty, an international agreement to protect these volunteers. He was suggesting that there is a limit to warfare, a space where humanity has to take precedence.
And people listened. The timeline is incredibly fast. The book is published in 62. By February of 63, you had the Committee of 5.
And Dunant is one of them. This committee is effectively the founding body of the Red Cross. And look who's on it, a general, a lawyer. He got the establishment on his side.
But a committee in Geneva can't tell other armies what to do. They needed international buy-in.
So they hustle. Dunant pours his own money into this, traveling Europe, lobbying governments, using all those old business connections.
And it pays off. October 1863, they hold a conference. 16 nations show up. And less than a year later, August 1864, 12 nations signed the First Geneva Convention.
Which is lightning speed for diplomacy.
I want to stop on that, what they actually signed. The most visible part was adopting a special identifying emblem.
Right, and the source is very specific here. It says the conference agreed on, in virtually all instances, a red cross on a field of white.
Which brings us back to that Christian ethic. I mean, Dunant is a YMCA man. The committee is Genevan. The symbol they chose, it was meant to be neutral.
But you can't ignore the iconography. It's a cross.
Exactly.
And the source actually has a fascinating footnote on this. It notes that in Muslim countries, the emblem used is the red crescent. And for a while in Iran, it was the red lion and sun.
Which tells you that while the idea of neutrality was universal, the symbol was very much rooted in Dunant's specific cultural context.
It's a perfect example of how history happens. This universal impulse, let's stop suffering, gets filtered through the lens of the people in the room. They were Swiss, they were Christian, they made a symbol that made sense to them.
And later, the symbol had to adapt to maintain that neutrality.
Exactly. So by 1864, Dunant has done the impossible. He's transformed a traumatic memory into international law. He's the toast of Europe.
And this is where the story pivots. Hard.
Because while Henry Dunant was busy saving the world, Henry Dunant, the businessman, was completely falling apart.
Oh, right, the mills.
So did he. He never got those water rights. And while he was off selling the Red Cross idea, his company in North Africa was being totally mismanaged. He wasn't watching the books.
You can't just ignore a 100 million franc company.
The collapse was total. In 1867, just 3 years after the Geneva Convention, Dunant declares bankruptcy. And in 19th century Geneva, that wasn't just a financial problem, it was a moral failing. A huge scandal.
The source says he was no longer welcome in Genevan society.
He was a pariah.
Right?
The same people who applauded his humanitarian work turned their backs on him because he lost money. The irony is just painful.
And the description of his life after that is so hard to read. It says he was living at the level of a beggar.
It's vivid, isn't it? Dining on a crust of bread.
And this detail just stuck with me. He would blacken his coat with ink to hide the wear and tear.
And whiten his collar with chalk. Just imagine that. The man who sat with an emperor now coloring his coat, just desperate to maintain a shred of dignity.
So he leaves Geneva, and for about 20 years, the world just loses him.
The lost years. From about 1875 to 1895, he drifts. eventually retreating to a small Swiss village called Haydn.
And this is where we end up back in room 12.
In 1892, his health fails. He moves into the local hospice. He's given room 12, and that's where he stays for the last 18 years of his life.
But he wasn't completely invisible, was he? A Peacher found him?
A man named Wilhelm Sonderegger, yeah. He found him and tried to tell people, hey, the founder of the Red Cross is alive. But it didn't really catch on until 1895, when a journalist tracked him down and wrote a huge article.
And then the pendulum just swings right back. Suddenly he's a hero again.
Overnight, awards, honors, messages of sympathy. And then finally, in 1901, the Nobel Committee awards him the very first Nobel Peace Prize.
This is the part that I find so psychologically fascinating. He's in a hospice, he's been poor for decades, and now he has this huge influx of cash and recognition.
Right. Most people would buy a new coat, go back to Geneva in a golden carriage and say, I told you so.
Dunant does none of that. He doesn't move from room 12. He doesn't change a thing.
And he doesn't spend the money. Not on himself. His will is very clear. He left money to the people who cared for him in the hospice. He endowed a free bed for the poorest sick people in the village.
And the rest.
He gave it to philanthropic causes.
Why? I mean, was it bitterness?
I think it was deep, calcified bitterness. He felt the money had come too late, that the recognition didn't make up for decades of exile and poverty.
Which brings us right back to that final request.
I wish to be carried to my grave like a dog. No ceremony. It's a final rejection of the society that had rejected him. They loved his creation, the Red Cross, but they didn't care about him, the man.
They loved the deed, but despised the doer.
And it forces you to grapple with the cost of this kind of work. Dunant's life proves that doing good doesn't protect you from ruin. He sacrificed everything for this cause.
But the result, I mean, the Geneva Convention still stands. The Red Cross and Red Crescent are in almost every country on Earth.
Exactly. Every time you see that emblem on an ambulance in a disaster zone, it traces directly back to one man's refusal to look away from suffering at Solferino.
Even if he died feeling like a total failure.
He died in room 12, alone. But the idea he had, that idea is immortal.
That is a heavy, but I think a necessary place to leave it. We've gone from the boardroom to the battlefield, from a palace to a poorhouse.
It's a reminder that history isn't just made by conquerors. Sometimes it's made by a guy who just wanted a signature for a watermill and ended up changing the world because he couldn't look away.
So here's the final thought for you to carry with you. Henry Dunant died believing he was treated like a dog. He died bitter. And yet, his work is one of the greatest humanitarian achievements of the 19th century. So, does the happiness of the creator matter if the creation itself is good? And is personal sacrifice, even total ruin, always the price of that kind of world-changing idea?
That's the question that stays with you.
Think about that. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.